You're listening to the Gate of Trust podcast. Join hosts Matt Trush and Felix Friedberg's heart-to-heart conversations with artists, entrepreneurs, scholars, and laymen who, by strengthening their trust in God despite all odds, experience outright miracles. Trusting in God can literally save lives. And now, Gate of Trust podcast hosts Matt and Felix.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Felix. And this
is the Gate of Trust podcast.
Hey, so Matt, I've got a really good one for you this week. A guy gets a fancy new limited edition BMW. It is very special, and he's parking it for the very first time. And while he opens the door, someone drives by and knocks the door right off. He gets out of the car. He looks at the door on the ground. He looks at the guy who ran into his car speeding off. And he says, I cannot believe that car just knocked into my brand new BMW and tore off the door. That's crazy. Of course, the bubby walks by, sees this guy, and says, Sir, your arm got torn off with the door. To which he replies, my Rolex.
Felix, I get the joke. Sometimes, especially in high-pressure situations, it's hard for us to see what's the real truth.
Exactly, Matt. Today, we're speaking with Nir Moriah, former Taekwondo U.S. national champion and Olympic trainer who studies the Gate of Trust every day.
Nir is a quantum performance coach, teaching the art of exceptional performance, getting investors, entrepreneurs, and sports teams to maximize their performance under high-pressure conditions.
You know, the most unique aspect of quantum performance coaching is how Nir incorporates Judaism, Chassidus, and now Bitachon, trust, into his coaching toolkit. I can't wait to hear more.
Me too. Here's the brilliant Nir Moriah. Nir Moriah, welcome to the Gate of Trust podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Is it Nir Moriah, I hope, or you go by Moriah or Moriah? I would think Moriah, right?
I say Moriah, but I knew who you were talking about.
The Hebrew would be Moriah?
Yeah, Moriah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, Nir Moriah. It's like the wind, right? That's
exactly. They call the wind Moriah.
They call the wind Moriah. I think it's a song. Well, it's good to see you, Nir. It's been, I think, since the last time I saw you was here in the shul in Houston, and a lot has changed since we spoke, and we'll get to that later. But I think we're going to take a little bit of a look in terms of understanding your background. When you talk about someone who's a Taekwondo national champion, it brings up a lot of questions. So how is it that you fell into becoming a Taekwondo national champion? There's a lot that goes into that. So maybe you could share a little bit about that. And an Olympic trainer, and then to a quantum performance coach. Like, give us an idea, like your story.
Okay, so I started training in Taekwondo when I was 5.5 years old. I was born in the States in New Haven, Connecticut. And I wanted to play flag football, actually, with my friends. I think my mom just didn't want me to play flag football. And so she...
That's standard Jewish mother.
Yeah, but she didn't present it like that. That's my hunch. And so she opened the Yellow Pages back when people had Yellow Pages. And there was this advertisement. It said Korean coaches and Korean sport. So she's like, they probably know what they're doing. And I went to the class. And the first class, kids made fun of me. And I came home and I was like, I don't want to go. My father's Israeli. I was like crying. He was home and he was like, you only went once. You don't know what you're talking about. Go again. And I couldn't argue with the logic. Like, it made sense. So I went again. And the second time I had a really good time. And so I'd been doing it ever since. Basically, what got me to becoming a national champion was very quickly I started to understand that the more effort I put into Taekwondo, the better I got. And so it kind of intuitively made sense that this was something limitless, which was very intriguing to me. I don't know why, but I've always had a drive to kind of like push the limits. I figured the higher pressure you're at, the more you push the limits, the better you become. Something in that process, even before I could articulate that I was doing that as a kid. No matter how much I learn, I'm only going to second grade. There's nowhere, I'm only going, one grade at a time. There's nowhere to go. But in Taekwondo, it felt like I could continue to progress according to the effort that I put into it. When I was 9 years old, my family moved back to Israel. I grew up there. I served in the military there for 3 years, but I was on this Olympic track because I had very good results at the junior level in Israel. Then after the Army, I decided to move to the best training program in the world, which happened to be in Houston, where I met all of y'all.
See how lucky we are?
Yeah. Houston was an amazing experience for me, not only from a training standpoint or from an education standpoint, because I graduated from Rice, but from a spiritual standpoint, because growing up in Israel, like, there's secular Jews, Arabs, and religious Jews. And then there's the rest of the world that wants to kill you. Like, the categories are very clear. And even though I came from a very secular home, like where God wasn't mentioned, we didn't believe in God, I knew that everybody else's God is ridiculous. That other religions I knew were ridiculous, like for sure not true. So I don't believe in God, but I know, but my God beats your God is basically kind of the assumption, and not because of any exploration. Just there was no guidance one way or another. The categories were pretty strict in the society, and so when I got to Houston, there was an opportunity to explore faith, which was something that had never even come up in a conversation in Israel. You were religious, secular, Arab. Those were the options. And in sports are anywhere where there's high pressure, whether it be entrepreneurship or sports or family dynamics, relationships, anywhere there's pressure is essentially an exercise in emunah and bitachon. Most people don't categorize it like that, but it became very clear very quickly that that's what was going on. So, for example,
Nir, why do you think that is? It's very cool. Like you're talking about how in Taekwando or in life and anywhere where there's a lot of pressure, there has to be a lot of bitachon. So can you maybe extrapolate a little bit, like what makes you say that? What makes you think that?
Training at the Olympic level, when the pressure is high, it becomes completely obvious that hashgacha pratit is working all the time, at every moment, every second. It's not like you have to convince somebody of it. It's apparent. And I've got thousands of stories like this. Not only from me, like when people describe their stories, when you talk to athletes, what happened behind the scenes, the sequence of events, the things that happen, it's clear that hashgacha pratit is working, from the word that somebody says or from you caught the bus, whatever it was. There's a million things that happen, but when you're under pressure, it becomes very clear. So, for example, my teammate Steven, he was in the Sydney Olympics, I think. He was in between matches, and like all of a sudden he gets like a cramp. When you're dehydrated or you're really working, it won't release, So he gets a cramp, and he tries to release this one leg, and he gets a cramp in the other side, and he's like stuck. And somebody comes by, this guy out of nowhere, and he goes, "Here, mate, have a Coca-Cola." And you're like, usually athletes don't drink Coke. He said, but it's really good for your muscles. It'll relax your muscles. So I guess he needed some sugar or something. He took the Coke, his muscles relaxed. He didn't know where the guy came from. He had never seen him before. He couldn't find him afterwards. Like the guy just came by, gave him the Coke, released his muscles, and moved on.
What a story.
It goes from kind of like smaller instances like that to larger instances.
Didn't you have a story in Russia? I remember you were traveling to Russia and you were trying to catch a bus, and like all the things that happened on that story. What was that story?
So I was in Russia, in Moscow for a competition, and I had made it clear like that I was going to keep Shabbat, but like everything possible about Shabbat, the money and traveling was the two major things, and I was doing everything in my power to kind of like to keep that. And for this competition, I actually had to cut a lot of weight on the day of the weight, more than usual. I had to cut like a little bit over 5 kilos, which is almost like 11, 12 pounds. It was a lot. It was more than I was planning. I managed to do that, which is a story in
itself. Need to weigh in, right? At a certain weight. So you had to lose weight very quickly in order to qualify for this fight, right?
So my normal weight class is 163. I probably, when I'm training and everything, I'm probably weighing around, if I'm not training, I could, be like 170, somewhere around there. But if I'm training, 166, 165. But it's work. It's 3 months of work to get down to 149, or 68 kilos, which was the Olympic weight class.
You need 149 to get in the lower weight class? That's what you needed?
It's 68 kilos, which is like 149.7, if I'm not mistaken. But
so you have to go from 163 or 65 down to 149 pounds?
So I started off like at let's just say 170. You really have to get down to about within 6-7 pounds, ideally 5 and under, right? So that you can like make the weight. You can just do a good workout, get a good sweat, and then weigh in. I had a lot of challenges with the training partners and my workouts and everything to even get there. So I started, my 3 months out and everything, but for a whole set of reasons, I got there and not only was I not the 5 pounds, I was 5 kilos over, which is like 11 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I had to cut it that day. Anyway, it took me so much time to cut the weight. I made the weight, but I'm at the hotel of the host event. It's about to be Shabbat and I don't have time to get anywhere. I thought I was going to be staying another place. I'm stuck, right? And so I asked them, there's like 1,000 competitors at this event. And I had checked, like that the competition, if you got the room was included with breakfast. So like, okay, I'm not going to have to spend money in the morning and blah, blah, blah. And I'll be able to get to the competition. No problem. At least I'll have food for the day. And so I come up to the guy, like, I don't know if you've ever been dehydrated, but like you can, your ears are ringing a little bit. Like it's not comfortable. I can barely hear the guy. Like I'm like this, I'm so exhausted. And this guy's with his, broken English. I'm trying to get a room. I know this is a long shot, but do you guys have any rooms or this room that I'm looking for? He goes, no, we're all out. I'm like, oh, he's like, but we have these business rooms. I'm like, oh, how much is the business room? And it was like all the money I had. He's like, oh, actually, we have the room that you were looking for. You know, he keeps checking, and then he's like, but at half the price. I'm like, oh, this is hashgacha pratit. Amazing. So he gets me. I'm like, I'll take it. I take the room. I go grab whatever food and drinks I can to have something for Shabbat. And that was a story in itself. It was like, I was so dehydrated. I was so exhausted. I wanted to cry. All I wanted to do was cry. And I was like, listen, you can cry and feel bad for yourself, or you can do something to try to enjoy this moment or turn this into a positive. And honestly, what I did is I don't know if you ever saw the movie Hook with Robin Williams. Basically, there's a scene there where they're like imagining food and then it becomes real. And so I went to all the Shabbatot I had in Houston, all of the good times, all of the good experiences. I got dressed for Shabbat. I had Gatorade, like some cheese, a cracker. Like I didn't have food, right? But I tried to imagine this feast, and I, sang the songs, and I did the prayers. I did everything, and I turned this. My body's exhausted. I turned this into a positive experience.
Wow.
And in order to not break Shabbat in the morning, I was like, I'm going to go as early as possible. It's electric doors, but I don't want to have to come back in. So I'll take all my stuff, I'll put it downstairs, and I'll be ready to go. And so I go downstairs, I put everything downstairs. I'm the first person down there. It's 6:00 in the morning. And I walk over to the breakfast hall, and I walk in, and I'm about to walk in, and the person says, what room are you in? So I tell them my room number, and they, it was in Russia. So it's like this printed out list. So they go over the list, and they're like, you're not on the list. Oh my gosh. So they go, go check at the front desk. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to an ex-communist country, but their buildings are huge for no reason. It's like I'm at the dining room, but the guy at the front desk is like a mile away for no reason, right? So I trek over to the guy, and there happens to be this Chinese guy who's there, and he's like in a hurry to get out of there. He's like, I need to go, check me out. I need to go. I'm in a hurry. Get me out of here. I need a hurry. And so the guy says to him, 1 second, let me just help this guy. And I said, listen, for some reason, I'm not on the list for breakfast. And he goes, yeah, your room is at a discounted price. I go, yeah. He goes, it doesn't include breakfast. I'm like, oh, well, how much is breakfast? And it was like, I had the money, but I was like, I don't want to spend money on Shabbat, right? I'm like, God, like, Ribono Shel Olam, help me. I don't want to spend money on Shabbat. I made this commitment. I don't know what to do. Like, I can't go to a competition without food, And then this Chinese guy goes, and cancel my breakfast. I'm like, oh, is hashgacha pratit. I'm like, sir, if you don't mind, if you're on your way out and you want to cancel your breakfast, would you mind if I use your breakfast? And he says, no. I'm like, oh my gosh. He's like, no, I'm in a hurry. Cancel my breakfast. I'm like, Ribono Shel Olam. Like, so I'm like in the corner. I'm like right about to, like, do I use money on Shabbat? I don't use money on Shabbat. And then this Chinese guy, for no reason, says, these guys he's talking to, there's no reason. He's yelling this. He goes, and cancel breakfast for room 734. I'm like, oh, I hear the room number. I look over at the breakfast, like now I got a number. And I see that it's a new person, right? This person doesn't know me. So I walk up, now I got a number. I know this Chinese guy is not going to notice. He's going to cancel. It's going to pop up. By the time they figure this out, the Chinese guy's going to be gone. I'm going to be gone. He's going to contest it. It's not going to cost any money, but I'm going to get my breakfast. So I walk up to the guy, and he goes, room number. Now I'm like confident. I'm like 734. And I start to walk in, and he goes, Mr. Han. And so time stops, right? And in my mind, two things like pop up, like a bubble in a cartoon. Two things pop up. One, I'm like, I'm about to crack up because obviously I'm not Mr. Han. And if this guy asks me one more question about myself, I don't know anything about Mr. Han. I don't know what I'm going to, like, I can't confirm anything this guy asks me. And at the same time, I go, Nir, if you hesitate even for a second, you're stuck. Right. So like it opens up this in real life, this took like a millisecond, but in my mind, this, it spread. So it like opens up. I have these two options, like don't laugh and better answer decisively. And I go, yes. And he goes, okay. And I walked in and had breakfast. And so I was like, it's a small story, but I was like, I knew not to spend money on Shabbat. I had made the commitment. I got tested and I was like, no, please, God, just help me.
Wow.
And,
how do you lose 10 pounds in a day?
How do you lose 10 pounds in a day? It's a lot of work, but it was like, It took me about 5 hours to do. I know like in a typical workout, I do a little 45-minute hour workout. I can lose like 1.5 kilos, which is like 3 pounds. So I know I can do that. So I did a little workout. I'm running around Moscow. I don't know where I was, some industrial area in Moscow. And I found like this little park. I did this little workout. And then I got back to where I was staying, and there was like a gym right across the street. And then I went into the sauna. So I went to the sauna. It's a Soviet. It's not like in America where it's like a heater that's set. Like you determine how hot it's going to go by how much water you pour on these like piping hot stones. And so depending on how hot it is, you can maybe last 8 minutes, 10 minutes. But as you're going on, it's harder and harder to stay in there. But basically, I'd do like 10 minutes in the sauna. There was a swimming pool right there. So I would jump right in the swimming pool. I would swim down, back, go to the shower, take a cold shower, dry off, weigh myself, see how much I lost. Go into the sauna, 10 minutes, come out, jump in the pool, swim down, swim back, take a shower, dry myself off, see how much I lost. I did that for 4 hours.
Wow.
And then I made the weight. I mean, there's a certain point where your body won't lose any more weight or water, but I was right on the verge of how much I can lose and still be okay. One, for your body to do it, and two, to still be okay the next day. I was a little tired, obviously, the next day. It's more than you would normally want to do, but it's doable.
Amazing.
So when you're in a pressure-packed situation, you see that things are essentially chaotic and that you need organizing principles to function effectively in those environments. And an organizing principle has to be based on something that is not only true objectively, but is true subjectively to you, right? So you have to connect to something that is the Torah or Emunah and Bitachon. The beauty about Torah is that it's like the meta truth. It's the truth that all other truths stem from. I've kind of gone through that exercise for myself in different realms. So for example, when it comes to religious life or spiritual life, a lot of times when people like are chozrim b'tshuva, when they balei tshuva, there's a tendency to go to the other extreme. And I was like, listen, I'm not switching up one set of problems for another set of problems. That didn't make any sense. So I was careful to kind of go step by step. And that at the end of the day, if you trust God, then you trust that God also put you in the environment that you started off in. And also that not everybody's supposed to be the same. So I started to think of it kind of like in terms like of, the military. There's different units, different people have different jobs, different responsibilities. But everything is important for the army to function. I was like, look, what am I uniquely good at? What do I do better than anybody else? What do I have an advantage on over people that are coming from a religious environment? What do I have over an advantage over people coming from a secular environment? And what I thought came naturally to me, and also I could see it came naturally to me also from the responses, what other people, not everybody always saw what I was seeing, not everybody responded to what I was doing, but it was basically a balance between Kodesh and Chol. And I was very good at bringing the Kodesh down into the Chol and bringing the Kodesh out of the Chol. So I could see a mundane environment and see what was the spiritual kind of nugget in there. And I could take very lofty principles and reduce them down to like very mundane language. And I was able to change up that language depending on who I was relating to. That I think came from the fact that my father is a painter, he's an artist. And I had a sense from a very young age of, basically, the whole point of learning the fundamentals of something is to free who you are. And if you're saying something that somebody else is saying, then what was the point of you showing up here? And so I had a very similar approach to sports like that, to spirituality. I did everything like that. So I was like, I'm very good at the Kodesh from the Chol and the Kodesh into the Chol and Kodesh out of the Chol. So I gravitated also to those subjects and studies in Torah. Like I studied thousands of hours of the Rav Kook, and I studied thousands of hours of Chassidut. But I always had like a take on it that maintained my identity, which is a very difficult thing because also one of the main principles that comes through Torah studies is this idea of bitul and anava. But I'm like, no, but this part is also God-given. So I was very, very disciplined to, one, check myself. Is this pride? Is this yitzhar? What is this? And if I saw that any of my spiritual studies or religious behaviors that I incorporated, if they started to like diminish my light or my spirit or who I was, I would recheck. And if my insistence on something started to override ultimate truth, I would also have a sensitivity to that. Like, Nir, you're overdoing it. Now, it's a much harder process to take on than simply to follow the prescribed step, but the reward is also in kind. I feel like that's what get your own geula pratit, and you're contributing to the geula klali. So I was like, look, it's extremely difficult, but like the Mesilat Yesharim says, Adam la'amal yulad. That's your job. You're supposed to put in this effort. You're supposed to toil. It starts off as a very difficult, a very, could be negative or challenging and so on and so forth. But if you understand that that's the purpose, then it starts to take on a positive connotation, which is l'havdil elef alfei avdolot, but it's no different than training at the Olympic level, which nobody wants to be in a position where their lungs are burning and it's emotionally challenging and mentally draining. And when you're under pressure, there's doubts. Yeah, I don't care there's doubts that creep up and there's doubts that show up, and how you handle that is the exercise. So most people don't want to go through that exercise. So it just so happens to be that everybody that you admire that's done anything of any kind of amazing accomplishment, I don't care what field it is, has gone through that exercise. In other words, they had the doubts, they mastered the doubts. They had fear, they mastered fear. They lacked skills, they developed the skills. They doubted themselves, they overcame themselves. They were arrogant, they learned humility. So everything that you've seen in every field that is some magnificent accomplishment that you truly value, they've all gone through a process of tshuva. They don't know it necessarily, they might not call it that, but it was a tshuva, and it always has the same recipe in it. There's faith, there's humility, there's bitachon, there's tshuva. You can't get away from it.
Nir, what I'm hearing is that your objective principle is the Torah's truth, and that the kedusha can be incorporated into whole. The work and the avoda, making that subjectively true, is at every point along the way, as you're incorporating the truth of Torah into your life, you're doing a check-in. Does it make sense? How do I react to that? How do I incorporate it? How do I make sure that the truth, which is the Torah's truth, becomes part of me, and I don't just necessarily lose myself. I don't become a cookie cutter of other people and the way they've incorporated truth into their lives, but rather I've taken the Torah's truth and I've made it one with who I am be'emes as well.
Exactly.
In a practical sense, you're under pressure, you're going for the gold medal, or you're going for the boardroom presentation and the win. Do you think that it's related to our desire for outcomes? Like when there's high pressure, there's big outcomes. And so does it have to do with our confidence that we have either in ourselves or the confidence with Hashem?
That's a very good question. So first, I'd like to make the distinction that if under pressure you're focusing on outcomes, that is clear sign of, one, a lack of bitachon, and two, the yetzer hara. Because the only way you can guarantee outcomes is if I do Taekwondo against 10-year-olds, I'm going to win every single time. I can guarantee the outcome. But there's
I don't think anyone's going to want to watch that, Nir.
Nobody's gonna. I don't know. You never know in today's society.
Anything will go on TikTok these days.
Maybe on TikTok. Yeah.
Maybe on TikTok. But point being is that nobody can guarantee outcomes. The whole reason that the situation is pressure packed is because there's uncertainty, and so a focus on an outcome is the fastest way to lose your bitachon and to typically mess it up. It's harder to do, but when it's done, it makes things much simpler to trust yourself under pressure, right? So what you're aiming at is performance, or let's just take something simple like mitzvot or halacha, right? If I know the halacha, I have the actions. I know what actions to take, right? There's not a question about, do I light the candles this way? Do I put on the tefillin that way? That's clear. Same thing with the performance in a given field. There's the tools you have to exercise, and you have to trust those. But really, what you're doing is trying to read what's going on under pressure, and you have the tools at your service, and you're trying to express yourself. For example, let's say in the boardroom, it's not about getting the deal so much as perhaps maybe connecting to the person or articulating and communicating your part of the deal best as you can.
Nir, let me bring up some concepts because I feel like you're talking right out of the Gate of Trust book. Chapter 4 mentions 3 steps to executing anything, right? Especially it's in business, it's in life, it's also in mitzvot. Step number 1 is to make the choice to do something. The second one is the actual planning and the execution of that. The third step is actually doing it. So in terms of business, we have no idea what is the right choice, what is the right plan, and whether or not we'll succeed. So for all 3 of these, we have to completely rely on God. When it comes to Torah and mitzvot, we don't have to throw up our hands and say, what am I supposed to do? Because God's already clearly revealed to us that 1, we're supposed to choose Torah. 2, we're supposed to execute it according to halacha. And 3, that's where we can have our trust in God that we're going to succeed. So what I hear you describing especially when you started off as a child, you felt is the more effort I put, the more certain I am success. But what Shar Bitachon teaches you is that you can have number one, you can make the choice to carry out something. Number two, you have the will and the plan to go do it. That's all your training. But whether or not you'll succeed at the end of the day comes up to your connection to God and your tachon. That was the words I heard you say. So that's number one, a very interesting point. The second thing I heard you say that's very unique is that ultimately when you're under that high pressure situation, you are tested in what do you believe in? Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your training? And all these things are limited. You yourself are a limited human. You have limited experience. Do you trust your body? Do you trust your mind? Or do you connect to a higher source, an infinite source, which can be ultimately trusted? And I think what Shar Bitachon tells you is that true opportunity for success is when you connect above, when you connect to the infinite. What do you think about that idea?
I think the description was accurate and good, except there's two things I think I can add. First of all, when I said the more effort I put in, the better I got, not more success. And that small distinction is important because it's internal. It's performance-based. I just felt freer. I felt better. I could do more stuff. As a kid, your incentive, I wanted to get a blue belt because I love the color blue. That was the extent of my thought process. But the point is, there was external motivations, but the process was completely internal. And that's where the reward was.
The second point I mentioned, Nir, was that when we are connecting to something limited, when we put our trust in ourselves, in our mind, in our training, then who knows what the outcome will be. In fact, God may even set us up to fail. But when we connect and trust in God with full bitachon, then we have the opportunity to rely on God and his powers, which are infinite.
Perfect. So, there's a teaching from the Rav Kook that a person should always have, like, the Torah should always be taught klalim, ki hapratim meyag'im et ha'adam. Meaning that the Torah should be taught principles, basically in principles, because the details torment man. In other words, we all have been in the situation where you're so worried about the halacha that you miss the whole point of the mitzvah, right? That's the equivalent of putting too much trust in your skills or tools or talents or whatever it is and forcing an outcome. That's the equivalent. If you take the halachot as a principle that's supposed to connect to God and that's supposed to allow you to put yourself into it and to free your faith and to free your abilities, there are performance principles in what you do that are similar. In other words, if you've identified a good principle, it does the same thing as a mitzvah. Lehavdil. It's not the same. One is in Kodesh and one is in Chol. But Chassidut is about infusing Kodesh and Chol. So if you hit the principle, it frees your potential, it frees your training, it focuses you, you're connected to Hashem, you're connected to yourself. The addition I wanted to make is basically, if you've been able to make the correlation, like the mitzvah and Kedusha, you're able to find the principle in the Chol in what you're doing, you're able to generate similar things, particularly under pressure.
Hey, Matt, I just need to tell you about something that happened just this last Sunday.
Let's hear it, Felix.
It's a little embarrassing, but I was out for a drive.
In your new BMW?
Oh, gosh, no, Matt. In my old Hyundai.
Okay.
Just hold on. So I was out driving, and I got a call from Sandy.
Is everything okay?
Oh, yeah, it's okay. She says, Felix, you need to be careful. I heard on the radio that some Meshuggah is driving the wrong way on the 610 freeway. I said, Sandy, you're telling me I just passed 100 people going the wrong way.
Felix, sometimes we think the whole world is going the wrong way, when in fact, it may be us.
The gate of trust teaches us, rather than looking around us at what everyone else is doing, instead, we need to look up to heaven to know the proper direction.
Let's get back on track, Felix. Here's Nir Moriah.
The one thing that was always difficult for me, we all make mistakes in Emunah and Bitachon, and you're practicing it. And the one mistake that I would make that I only picked up just now when I was like I study it every day, so like just recently that I really put together. I had developed a lot of Emunah along the way, and something like in Chovot HaLevavot and Sha'arei Bitachon, it's telling you what the Bitachon is, how you how you acquire it, how you lose it, how you maintain it, right? So one thing that I had was a principle that is kind of just being ingrained now is the distinction that you're supposed to have trust in God regardless of the outcome. And so the outcome could be negative, the outcome could be positive, but you're supposed to trust in God. And I always heard that, then I'm supposed to trust in God 100% in the revealed good, but sometimes it might happen and sometimes it might not happen. It sounded like a cop-out to me. right? So it wasn't giving me much confidence, especially like the higher the pressure, the more that's on the line, the more certain you have to be in what it is you're doing. So that was not reassuring in any shape or manner. And then I made the distinction. I was like, wait a second. The first thing is to understand that bitachon is for the revealed good to be all the way down, fully manifested in all of its details above and beyond what you could possibly imagine in reality. And if you haven't done that, then it's not full bitachon. And there's a process that you have to go to have full bitachon to be able to reveal that good. I remember the Rebbe saying one time, if one person here truly believed in the Mashiach coming, he would come today, right? It's a lot of pressure, right? And then it's another point. Until you get there, whether the result is this or that, trust God. I heard it as either or instead of one and then two. So you're aiming for this and you're trusting in this. At the specific moment, if it happens to be this or that, then accept that, but continue on to what you're doing. And which ties into another principle. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. Anachu am netzach. We're the eternal people. So eventually, all of the Geulah will happen. Right. And so just like we trusted on a national level or a historic level, the same thing in your own personal life. So if at any given moment you haven't gotten the fullest revelation of your potential, the fullest revelation of the dream, of the vision, then it's a sign to not to stop, but what to work on. Work on the bitachon. Trust that this is from Hashem. It's a momentary point, but keep aiming at this kind of ultimate revelation. And so I'd always heard it initially as like, was it some kind of cop-out? Well, trust in Hashem 100%, but if it doesn't work, well then, okay, you have to accept. It wasn't very helpful.
Well, you don't think that when you're under pressure to win that gold, that's going to help you out. Oh, well, you didn't win. Oh, well, it's for the best. It doesn't, get you where you want to get.
Let's raise the stakes. I grew up in Israel. I was like, let's say you go to battle, you go to war. Okay, if you die, that's not a message you give to your soldiers right before battle. Well, listen, some of us are going to make it, some of us aren't. But listen, we're going to try our best. Nobody's leaving the foxhole like that, right? That's kind of how it sounded. And I knew it wasn't true, but I couldn't until I was studying it more and more and more and getting an understanding of really what it meant, bitachon. I didn't make that kind of subtle distinction.
In the Gate of Trust introduction, page 3 commentary, Rabbeinu Yonah explains bitachon as an extension of the negative commandment that a soldier should never fear the enemy during battle. Maybe the words you say to the soldiers in the foxhole are, we're about to go into battle, trust in God, and we will surely succeed.
Yeah, something like that. Then, you're going to take a step out.
Nir, you mentioned you've got 1,000 stories of bitachon. Tell us one that comes to mind that you think can inspire our listeners.
Well, there's a couple. First of all, just the fact that I moved to Houston. I was training in Israel. The training was not at the level that was going to help me win a world championships or an Olympic Games. And training in Israel was bad. It was not only bad, but it was detrimental. A lot of undermining. Who are you to believe that you can be successful? It was not a healthy environment. So it was a lot of tearing down instead of building up. And kind of one of the things when people have bitachon and other people around them don't, it's like you automatically get a target on your back. People just despise you just because it's like you're walking around revealing the one thing that they don't want to look at. You're just kind of da. So as a kid, I didn't have the tools to protect myself, but it was a bad environment, right? So I had kind of had that come to this new environment that was about faith and confidence and trust and so on. For 14 years, in the back of my mind, I was like, I want a place where I can train with the best and I can get a good education. And I traveled around the entire world looking for training and education, right? But I kept it in the back of my mind that this is what I'm looking for. So from the time I was 9 to the time I was 23, right? And I moved to Houston. I had that in the back of my mind. And just so happens that in Houston, the best training facility in the world was right next to the Jewish community and, 35 minutes from Rice University. So I could train and get an education. And so that was kind of on a more of a global level. I had a vision. I didn't let go of it. I had a dream and I stuck to it. So that was one story I thought to tell you guys. Another story, which is kind of it's a demonstration of bitachon, but by trusting someone else. I didn't make the team for the 2007 World Championships. I had been training in Houston at that time for 2.5 years. And at the time, my mom was about to have a stem cell transplant. She had a form of leukemia, a CLL. And so she was about to have a stem cell transplant. And I was like, I'm going to need to know, somebody's going to have the bitachon and confidence for the family to go, okay, we're going to be able to get through this. And since I wasn't going to compete at World Championships, but I was there to kind of support my teammate, who was the best ever in the sport, he was going for his 4th consecutive world title, which was going to be the record. Like, nobody had ever done it. It was a big deal. There was a lot of pressure. It was right before the Beijing Olympics. There's a lot on the line. And normally when you watch fights and competitions, if you want somebody to win, you're nervous. And I'm like, instead of being nervous, I'm going to exercise my trust. I'm going to exercise my confidence the whole day. I challenged myself. I'm in the stands. Like, nobody knew I was doing this. He makes it, and he makes it all the way to the finals, Steven. I'm in the crowd, and he was against Korea. Really good. This guy was like good.
They invented it, right? Korea invented it. Okay, so that's going to be tough.
Korean national sport.
It's not looking good. The pressure's high. Stakes are high.
The pressure's high, and the Koreans are notorious for cheating. Especially, he was going to like tie the record of a previous Korean guy. So they were going to try and cheat this guy left, right, and center, right? And so I'm thinking, what can I do? How can I exercise, instead of worrying, how can I exercise my bitachon? And we're in Beijing, and I started to get the whole Chinese crowd to chant for this U.S. athlete. The good thing about communism is if somebody take the reins, everybody follows. So nobody will do anything on their own. But if somebody starts telling them what to do, everybody follows. So I'm going from this side of the bleachers to that side and this, and I get the whole half of the stadium to start cheering for this guy. And I thought it was hilarious. And then he wins in overtime, like on the last second, and like everybody goes crazy. And right after that, I don't think I've ever told this story, but right after that, like walking down this, and I got I was so overwhelmed by the emotion. I'd never trusted anything under pressure. And then I was like, okay, now God, please just let my mom be okay. It was, I didn't even realize what I was doing, but I knew what was going on, and it wasn't even something I did. It was through somebody else, but in my limited space, I was like, how can I practice bitachon from this place?
But you channeled that energy, and you created an environment, a spiritual environment. You took your spiritual environment and you created a physical environment where he's on this floor in a foreign country, and people are chanting his name. And to every person, their name is the sweetest sound. So if you start to hear your name and you're worried about the physicality of winning, you transferred that bitachon to him physically and spiritually.
And I just remembered. I don't think I've ever told this story. I just remembered. I remember when I said, that was the first. I told him. I said, Steven, it's the first time I trusted. I gave you all my faith. I gave you all my confidence. The first time I've trusted pressure. He goes, I felt it. So he didn't say I heard the crowd. He said I felt that. And so there's something when you do those kinds of things that it's just transcendent. And so I think
at the end of the day, you recognize that power, that connection was because you ultimately connected to above, to Hashem.
Yeah. I just knew I made a conscious decision to not worry and to go, what happens if I trust under pressure instead of worry under pressure? That was the only thought. I didn't think more than that. It wasn't, obviously it had come because of the studies that I'd been doing, the things that I'd been paying attention to. All I knew was I don't want to worry under pressure. I'm going to try trusting under pressure. And it wasn't even something I wasn't about to go under. It was a small version of it. So I thought that was a good story because you can practice bitachon all day, every day, anywhere. You can practice bitachon. Your kids go out the door to school. You're going to go, I'm not going to worry, did I pack their lunch and are the kids going to make fun of them? Is the teacher going to be there? You can go, I'm going to practice every day. I'm going to send them my energy that no matter what challenge they run into, they're going to be able to remember some lesson and overcome and see what happens. We don't use it a lot. We're so used to worrying that you do it automatically, but I was like, well, what if you did this? What happens?
Right. When you send your kids out the door and you start to worry about this, that, or the other, and you realize, wait a minute, I don't make any decisions on what's going to happen today. I have no power over what's going to happen to my kids today. Only God does. So let me strengthen my trust in God, and everything will be okay.
Exactly.
Nir, it's amazing. And it sounds like you experienced trust and the power of trust. And now you're using that experience and that power to share with your coaching clients. Do you think that you're able to communicate these concepts through your study of Gate of Trust and other Jewish works to your clients and help them perform better under pressure?
Yeah. One of the things I did was like translate it, especially in performance settings or business settings. Although if you hear the top people speak, if you hear a Kobe Bryant speak or Michael Jordan speak, these guys had faith in their background. They were faith-based people, even though they didn't talk about it, right? And also the language they use is an expression of faith, even if they don't use faith-based words. And so what I did with quantum performance coaching is like, I recognized one from the training and everything I was doing, two from the Jewish studies, and three, I worked with one closely for like 15 years with one of the top performance psychologists in the United States, a guy named John Elliott, who taught at Rice. And he has a lot of private clients in different teams. He works with the San Antonio Spurs, the San Francisco Giants. He worked with doctors at the medical center in Houston and anything that's high level performance. So I had access to the science of things. I had access to the spiritual side, and I had access to kind of like seeing in real time what was taking place. So I had this kind of unique experience. And basically what I did with quantum performance coaching was translate it into very simple principles, kind of all of these big ideas to simple principles. So one is you have to have, under any kind of pressure, you have to have what I call a performance identity, right? So you have to have a way of how you see yourself and how you see what it is that you do. And that is a subjective component. Right? It's true, but it's subjective. It's like, what is my strength? What is my unique talent? When I do things, when I go about anything, how do I naturally do it? What am I naturally good at? And a good way to ask it is, what is your superpower? Not like, what superpower would you like to have? Like, can you fly or run at the speed of light? But like, what is your actual superpower? What do you do in a way that is better and different than anybody else? So that's
how did God create you different and special physically and spiritually, emotionally, that makes you unique, that you can bring to what you do in life?
Exactly. And two, when you tend to do that, there's also kind of, in something that you're doing, you tend to look at it in a specific way. So for example, Stephen in Taekwondo he always looked at Taekwondo as a test of faith, as a dance, the way he described it, as a dance. And he goes, somebody's going to crack. The reason he defined it in like that, because he knew his superpower was faith and that he wasn't ever going to lose his faith. So he knew that was a game he couldn't lose. And so once
if you have enough faith, you can keep dancing till the end, and you can.
Yeah, he knew everybody else is going to crack. Yeah. Exactly. Everybody else is going to crack, not me. Now, had he defined it in other terms, he might have lost, but he defined it in terms that was unique to him and that he was supremely confident in, that he was better than anybody else. So that's one thing, your identity. Two is what I call your performance targets. So one is that first thing is kind of subjective. The targets are not, they're objective. It's like in Gemara, you have the chefta and gavra. What is the thing mitzad atzmo, by its own essence, and what is it in relation to the person? So that the targets are the objective principles that you need. Where are you in the stage of development? Where are you in the steps of performance? What are the targets that are occupying your mind? What are the routines you do? So on and so forth. And then the third part is what I call your performance routine. So the performance routine is the things that you actually do under pressure that combine those two things. And people in general do things well when they do things rhythmically. So you'll hear this all the time when people play basketball. They caught the ball out of rhythm, so they missed the shot, right? So there's a certain way people get into a rhythm to execute. So if you have a clear sense of who you are, that identity, find what it is that you're doing in a way that is unique to you. You understand the fundamentals, tools of that thing, and then you go about exercising those fundamentals in a unique way, in a rhythmic way. All performance, doesn't matter what the field is, every level I've seen, every level of analysis, those are the operating principles.
Nir, it sounds like you're describing Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet. Chesed is the godly gifts that you've been blessed with. Gvura is the discipline and the targets that you follow. And the Tiferet would be the harmony or the rhythm that you sink into to execute the harmony of those two things.
Yeah, that's also a very good description. Exactly.
Nir, it's amazing that you're studying this new Gate of Trust edition every day and recognizing the power of Bitachon in your life.
If you had already mastered this Bitachon trust back when you were a Taekwondo competitor and trainer, what might have been different?
So I had it obviously to a certain degree. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do what I did. But if I had mastered it, I think that everybody has like a nevuah, like has a prophecy or an insight of what's possible, right? Like the Rebbe would say, if you see something that like needs to be fixed and you have a way to fix it, that means it's your thing to do. So I think that kind of dream or that vision or that insight or that slice of reality that you see, I think would have happened to the fullest degree and beyond It would have come quicker. It would have come easier. And not having mastered that or not knowing how to do that is what kept that away. It's also God's way of teaching you the lesson, because every time that doesn't happen to its fullest degree, you're like, what the, like, I got the insight, I got the vision. And there's one story about, when the Jews are leaving Egypt that I remember every time, because there's 4 categories of people there. There's the guys that go, and interestingly, they're all expressions of faith, right? There's one group that goes, let's go back to Egypt. Obviously, we miscalculated. Now they get to Yam Suf, they get to the Red Sea, they're going to cross. They see like this is the natural order is telling us that this was a mistake, basically. So the one group goes, let's go back to Egypt. We miscalculated with the trust that God's going to take them out another time. So that's a reasonable expression of emunah. The second guys go, look, life without this promise is not worth living. We're going to commit suicide. We're going to jump into the ocean. The third group goes, you know what? This might be over, but we're not going down without a fight. And the fourth group goes, this is beyond us, and let's pray to God. All of these are expressions of emunah. You see them every day in the Jewish people. You see them every day, other people and how they handle pressures.
And in our own lives.
And in our own lives, yeah. Moses starts praying to God, and God goes, basically, in Hebrew, it always, even the wording is like sa. Like if you go to Israel, you hear that all the time. Sa, yalla, sa. Like go, move. Like basically, he says to him, what are you turning to me for? I told you to go. It's a really interesting point there, because there's 4 very logical, very real spiritual arguments to be made there at the ocean, at the sea. And God goes, go through. And what does he do to Nachshon ben Aminadav? He goes in, it comes right up to his nose, and then it opens up. And he does it again. It comes open, and then it opens up. So all the way through the Red Sea, this guy's almost about to die, and then it opens up. Almost about to die, and then opens up. And so the fact that, when you go towards something that you truly believe in, that you truly want, that is truly your calling, you're going to have all of those logic, all of those, depending on your personality. It might be all of them. It might be one more than the other. But the point of one of those 4 or all of those 4 is going to come up, but you have to go. And it's going to come up right to where you think you can't take anymore. And that's when the breakthrough happens. And right when you think you can't take anymore, and that's where the breakthrough happens.
That is Bitachon.
That's Bitachon. It's the point where it goes, it's super rational. I just trust what you told me at the beginning, and I'm going. That's the part that's the emunah and Bitachon. And then there's the tshuva, there's the halacha. I have to do something physically, right? So what are the things? So in sports, okay, what are the fundamentals of my sport? I'm going to execute these. I don't know what the answer is. I can't see the end, but I trust these. I know this 100%, which kind of ties back to what I was saying before. I might not know exactly how to fully express this, my unique path in Judaism, but I keep going back to the principles and going. I keep going back to, sometimes I hit it more on the nose, sometimes I miss, sometimes I fail. Okay, I keep going at it because I'm like, look, God's not going to wake up all of a sudden and go, you know what? No, that dream I gave you, it was a joke, I didn't mean it. Like, imagine where, if you ever have a question about that, all you have to do is look to the people. There's the people that have been around for 4,000 years. They've been around when people sacrifice their children to Molech. Does anybody here know Molech? Have you seen Molech lately? Like, Like none of these cultures are around. We're a fraction of a percent. And every single time the people, survive by exactly that same principle. Some people give up along the way, but the people as a whole never give up on this promise. It's not logical. It's not realistic, but it's true.
So it sounds like bringing Mashiach also requires Bitachon.
From everything I've learned, it's the only thing that brings Mashiach, and I'm committed to doing that 1,000% in my life. It's not always easy, but I'm like, that's my job. If everybody does that according to whatever job God gave them, then I think we'll come quicker.
Amen.
So
Amen.
I'm trying to do that to the best of my understanding.
Nir, it's amazing what you're doing, and the fact that you now have this incredible new superpower, which is the gate of trust, the Shar Bitachon, to enlighten and inform and implement in what you do in your quantum performance coaching. Wishing you a lot of blessings and success. We want to know, for all of our listeners, if you have one thing that you could say to inspire the world to succeed, to become the gold in whatever it is you do in life, what would that be?
There's this line in a movie I saw not too long ago. I thought captured it perfectly. It's from this movie called Bleed for This. It's a story about this boxer. The reporter asks him, what is the biggest lie that you've been told in the sport? He goes, it's not that simple. He goes, well, what do you mean? He goes, no, that's the lie, that it's not that simple, right? When it is. It is that simple. Whatever they say you can't do, you just do it, and then it's done. I think the message I would like to convey is something similar, is that it's simple. להבדיל אלף אלפי הבדלות, but להבדיל, the Tanya says, כי קרוב הדבר עליך מאוד מאוד לעשותו, right? בלבבך, right? I think is the quote. It's simple. It's right there. It's not out here. It's not difficult. Just do it, you know? Anytime you see yourself going this way, anxious or doubtful or worried, just try the other way. Keep
the
it
whole
simple.
world tells you it's not so simple, but Bitachon teaches you that it is just that simple. Trust above and anything is possible.
Exactly.
Nir, thank you so much for your time, and we are excited to hear all the great things you're going to continue to do. Let us know how you're implementing Bitachon in your life personally and how you are implementing it with your work. And we, again, send our blessings, Mazel Tovs for your new Kala, Mazel Tovs for your baby. May you have many, many more in good health, and may you continue to be an inspiration to all those who you are having a positive influence on.
Amen, amen. I'm
Nir, the same to you. Continue strength to strength, and you should only have more success. It's great to see you again, and continued success and good Shabbos this week.
Okay, send my love to everybody in Houston, guys.
We will.
Thanks, Nir.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Hey, Felix. Let's remind listeners about the exclusive 25% off promo code TRUST, TRUST, on Kahoot.com.
Now you're saying it too, Matt. It's not Kahoot. It's Kahos.com. KEHOT.com.
Right. Enter the Trust promo code on Kahoot.com to get 25% off the Gate of Trust book published by Chayenu.
And if you can, leave a 5-star rating and subscribe on gateoftrust.org/podcast to enter a raffle to win a free Gate of Trust book, the Fellow Edition with Hasidic commentary.
You know, Felix, our Gate of Trust podcast is really taking off. Our guests so far have been super exclusive, right?
Oh, you're right, Matt. A former Taekwondo U.S. national champion and Olympic trainer who studies the Gate of Trust daily? This episode is sure to go viral.
Viral? It's more exclusive than that. This episode is sure to go pandemic.
Oh, Matt, one thing is true. When you tell your friends about Bitachon, it sure is contagious.
Thank you for listening to the Gate of Trust podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, and share the podcast with the people you love. To access today's show notes, ask Matt and Felix a question, or suggest the Gate of Trust story to be featured on the show, visit gateoftrust.org/podcast.
You think you got it under control, you're on a roll, living it up, living your dreams, but when it all goes bust at the seams, then you scream